Welcome to Montgomery and Company. I'm your host, Renee Montgomery. Let's get into it, y'all. So it's exciting times because this month I'm heading on my Why Did I Get Married vacation. And you might be wondering, why is it called Why Did I Get Married vacation? Well, we don't intend to have the same kind of time they had in the movie because that looked mad stressful. But before any of my friends and I were in serious relationships, we used to have a homies trip. And y'all know the saying, what happens at homies trips stays at homies trips. But now we're all married and in serious relationships. So we decided to change the homies trip to a couples trip. So I'm looking forward to some beach time with the wifey and the homies because it's honestly been a minute. And speaking of that, life is crazy because my homies and I, we've been friends since high school. And when I say friends since high school, I won a championship with my best friend, Lisa Lee, Talita and the crew. We've been going on vacations every year since then. So every time after my WNBA season would end, I usually only have 2 weeks in between WNBA season and when I had to report to my overseas team. Sometimes I didn't even have 2 weeks. So think about how crazy this is that we don't know when our WNBA season would end because it's based on your last game. So if you make playoffs, it's that last game. And that means if you go all the way to the championship, which we did a couple years with Minnesota, that means that after that last championship game, that's when we would go on vacation. So our vacation was always just sliding depending on when my season would end. And so then life happened. The pandemic happened as well. But then life happened and we started to be adults and started to adult a little bit more. We had serious relationships that we are in now. We had serious jobs. Not that the WNBA isn't serious, but they couldn't move around the same way they could before. One of my friends moved out of the country. Crazy. Shouts to Talita. And so we just kind of got away from our friend's trip. And we were in our group chat. Shouts to my dogs. And we were in our group chat and we were like, all right, y'all, we got to pick our trips back up. Like once a year, we can't figure out a time once a year that we can get together. And so we made it a priority at the beginning of this year, January 2024, that we would make a trip with each other and our boo things because now, we're in serious relationships. So now it's called Why Did I Get Married? Because unlike the movie, we're going to go and celebrate while we got married. I love all my friends' partners. They're the homies too. So now we're like a whole big squad crew and it's about to be lit. So we're going to be turning up at the DR, so the Dominican Republic. That's where y'all know wifey's a Dominicana. Shouts to all my Latina crew out there. But we're going to go to the DR and we're just going to take some time to enjoy ourselves, enjoy life, and never forget why we got married, but also still have our homies vibes because they're my day ones. Like they've been my day ones through all of it. Again, I always say this, you wasn't with me shooting in the gym. They really were. They're hoopers and we was all shooting in the gym together. And now everybody's doing big things as adults. So that's all I got. I mean, listen, also it's election season is wrapping up. So you got to take care of your mental health. We've been seeing all the commercials on TV, all the ads on the radio, all the debates, all the energy around this election season. So as we end this season, you got to take care of your mental health. Spend some time with your homies. Spend some time with your family. All right. So that brings me to my MVP of the week. And my MVP of the week is cuffing season, baby. Listen, come on. I'm on the same theme. Y'all already know. We finally have some cooler weather in Atlanta, which is crazy. It's getting chilly in the mornings, chilly at night. I'm married, so I'm not involved in cuffing season. My wife is the only person that I'm cuffing. But please, Netflix and chill. Have some chili and chill. I don't know what you do to have fun, but they usually say the rosters for cuffing season got to be in by end of October. By the end of November, you need to have your final 4. And then in December, it's full-blown cuffing season, baby, ready for the holidays. Treat yourself. Cuff yourself. All right? Y'all know what to do. Let's get into this week's episode. We'll be right back with more Moco. All right, let's get it. Y'all already know it's time for Let's Talk ATL, where we talk about all the trending topics going on here in the A. We got the fellas back with us again. I love having these guys here. We got comedian and podcast host of What's Good Atlanta, David Perdue, in the building.
What's up?
Okay, and listen, you see how I said we got a sophisticated brother over here. He's a journalist, a real journalist. Julien Virgin here with us, joining us back. Your second time on the show.
I appreciate you having us back.
Let's go. Let's go. All right, guys. So you're born and raised in
Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
And I think we have to be very specific too, because not Amaretta. Was it Amaretta? She came out with a song like Not Atlanta. Yeah. I was born outside the perimeter. I grew up in the metro Atlanta area. Just
okay. He's his credentials. I was not born here, but we weren't born here. But we're going to talk about something 2020, right? So 2020, we're going to take us back. This is like a little time capsule because I feel like these years are eerily synonymous. 2020 leading into a November election. Now we're back 2024 leading into a November election. But there was a lot of energy. And honestly, when I would turn on the news, ATL was on the news. Like very often we were the topic of discussion, even including the election, but also the topic of discussion of what was going on in the city. So we were all here 2020. I just remember for me, we started filming the documentaries. So A Radical Act is on Roku right now. We started filming, and that was an interesting point in my life because it was like I went from athlete where, they film you at the game. You know, I'm at the game. We doing our little sound bites, but having somebody in the house, that was a different time. And then Serena, my wife, she wanted us to go, we went to the protests. We was in the streets. So we was handing out waters. I just remember, for me, it felt like that's when me and ATL bonded. It was like I was in the city I was in the streets. We was in the dirt. We was in the mud together. And then when things started to happen, that's when I really feel like, okay, I am definitely in the thread of ATL. So that's kind of just off the top of my head. But I want to hear like, what are y'all's thoughts when you think about 2020 and Atlanta?
Open. Very much so open. At the time, I'm always a journalist at heart. I was a full-time DJ. I was spinning. I don't even like to say DJ. Mood manager, vibe provider. I was spinning records, right? Okay. And when they shut down the city, it kind of shuts down everything. Like the industry that I was in. And at the time, I was spinning records at, and I'm happy to drop them, Atlanta Breakfast Club. It's right across the street from the Georgia Aquarium, which is essentially like a big tourist hub. Right. Georgia Aquarium, the Coca-Cola Museum. And at the time, I realized that a lot of people were coming from out of state just to be in Atlanta because we were more so open and a little bit more active than the rest of the country. And so I just remember that time, Atlanta was kind of like, the wild, wild west in a sense that like, a lot of the country was shut down. And a lot of people were adhering to some of the restrictions and whatnot. However, in Atlanta, it was more so like, hey, you do what you do, we're going to do what you do, and then we're going to keep it moving. So I think the word open is definitely the one.
That's a good point you made because, like, even with me and my family, did y'all, like, were y'all open? Because I was in the house. Like, I'm going to be honest. Like, when we went to the protest, the first time we went, that was pretty wild for us because we had been in the house for, I don't know, a very long period of time where we did not leave. I'm talking about didn't step foot outside. So that is interesting. I forget that we were open though here.
Some people, I was like you. I was not. I was in that. I was like, oh, this is a break. Like we get.
Whoa, yes. I got married.
Yeah.
By the way, in 2020, I was one of the Zoom weddings that like.
I went to a Zoom wedding.
For real.
Yeah, I was like, we gotta keep this going.
Right.
I went to a wedding in my sweatpants. That was the best. One of the best ones I went to. The couple things I remember about 2020 specifically is understanding the magnitude of what was going on because I think I was in a Waffle House and I heard a Waffle House waitress go, I'm nervous about what's about to happen. And if you know anything about Waffle House workers, they don't be getting nervous. So that made me nervous. I was like, this might be big. I should prepare. But the second thing I think about the election, right? So everybody's trying to find out their way. Like you said, you went to the protest and like everybody's trying to figure out their way to do something, to be active. And one of the things I started was we did these Zoom comedy shows.
Nice.
And one of the ones we did was for Reverend Warnock at the time before he was Senator Warnock. And just having him on a Zoom comedy show to talk with, we booked George Wallace, famous comedian George Wallace. And I was just like, I just want to get them in a conversation to talk about whatever, just about being Georgia boys. And just hearing George Wallace be on there to talk with him and then also start doing your mama jokes.
Oh.
But I think just the spirit of like, by any means, let's just be active. Like, let's do something. And so just putting together a comedy show last minute and getting some comedians on there and having a good time, but just finding a way to fellowship even without being in person. I thought that was like, to me, that's what I remember about 2020 the most.
Dang, that's fire. And then, so that's interesting you say that because, okay, so let's shift into the energy heading into the election. We have different candidates. 2020, it was Biden versus Trump. And now we're fast forwarding it to 2024. It's Harris versus Trump. I feel like the energy is completely different in some aspects. I think that we now know a little bit more about who Donald Trump is. And so but then there's also we know and we cool with it. Georgia seems to be in play. Like everything that I hear now, it's like Georgia. Before you talked about Senator Warnock, that was a huge flip that happened. Shouts to the WNBA, the 144. Shouts to the Atlanta Dream. But now it's like I feel like there's a lot of. Is there a lot banking on this election? Like, do y'all feel this energy of like this election is about to change everything?
There's a lot to break down here because it depends on what part of the city you're in. And a lot of times people that say Atlanta is a melting pot. I mean, I would argue that sometimes like we can all be in our own silos, right? And the lines of the city are very clearly drawn. And there's certain neighborhoods where they get down one way and there's other neighborhoods that get down a complete other way. So depending on what neighborhood you in are going to be the messages that you're getting. From my reporting, just being out there in the streets, there are a lot of people that are on both sides of the aisle. And so, Georgia was won by a small margin last election. I'm curious with the pandemic not being the topic of conversation for the 2024 election, how that's going to change things, because that was a big deal. Former President Donald Trump had his stance on the pandemic and President Biden had his stance. And so I'm interested to kind of see what issues are going to be most important, how they're going to move
abortion?
Yeah. Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
I mean, like the biggest thing that I've seen, is like women are on the ballot. Like it's us. Like we are on the ballot.
Black women too. Let's I feel like we need to put it out there because there are people that are saying like, hey, people are only voting for Kamala Harris because she's a black woman. And I'm like, okay, well, we could say the same thing if you are a white person voting for Donald Trump. Identity politics is a big thing. Now, again, depending on what neighborhood that you're in and what silos that you do run in, those issues of abortion might be different outside the perimeter than they are inside the perimeter. And so
that's interesting, though.
The whole election is just interesting to me because the options are somebody, new blood, essentially, and then somebody who got fired.
Yeah.
Got fired. And then it's like, I want my job back. Who even wants that energy? Like,
is it new blood though?
It's different blood.
How would it not be new blood?
So as you watch the presidential debates and everything,
the VP debates,
it seems like the GOP, the Republicans, are essentially framing it as, hey, she's been here. Yeah. She's been here for the last 3 years. And so my question to y'all is it new blood?
Well, listen. I'm just sports playing because I'm the athlete. I always do it. If you got a head coach of a team and you're the assistant coach, do you think that the team is doing what you wanted, or are you lending yourself to do what the head coach would want them to do? This is just in sports terms. When you got a person that's number one, your head coach, even if I'm the associate head coach, if I say sub this, I'm not going to be saying sub this person. Hey, this is the plays we're going to run. This is our offense. Usually the head honcho, that's why it's heavy is the head that wears the crown. Absolutely. So in my mind, but again, this is always athlete brain. So I always have to adhere. I have an athlete brain. But if you number one, like if this is your stuff, then this is your thoughts. She might have some things that defer, but I think a good soldier in a sense of like sports is, if this is what you want, I'm going to make sure we can do anything that we want to get you to do. That's what Tim Walz is doing right now. Like, I would hope so, because he might have a little bit difference of policies in certain places, but baby, get in line.
Yeah, no, I think to keep the sports analogy, like you see certain players and they're on certain teams and it's like, hey, I just do this. This is my role. And you go to another team, like, dang, I didn't know they held that at them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're dropping 25 a game. I didn't know you could drop 25 a game. And so I think that that's part of what we're looking at with VP Harris. I also think it's interesting how they framing it like, oh, she's not new blood. When like he was a whole president.
Right.
Like,
so what about
and then we didn't pick him. So it's like you're the same old blood. So that's a weird argument to have.
Listen,
they have a lot of weird arguments.
The mental gymnastics that's happening right now is top tier.
Simone Biles could never, and that's saying something.
Precisely.
That's saying something. Yeah.
And I'm curious for you guys though. We've seen that there's with guys and VP Harris, there's some type of energy going on with not all black men, but I've seen online where people are saying that there's a large amount of younger black men that have a lot of questions when it comes to VP Harris, but they don't have a lot of questions when it comes to Trump. I'm just curious, have y'all seen that? Why do y'all think that? If so?
I think when some people ask certain questions of VP Harris, that's just them like not wanting to be forward facing about them in support of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people deflect, right? And it's just in my reporting, that's what I see. Instead of you making your point, you want to bash somebody else. And like, to me, that it's odd behavior.
Right.
But again, as a journalist, I'm listening to what you have to say. And I think that people are you are seeing, especially young black men, in favor of Donald Trump because of the way he does carry himself as like what a lot of men want to be, which is the end all be all. And I said what I said, and this is what it is.
So is that the thing? What's the appeal? I'm trying to figure it out. Like, what
you
is
tell me,
it?
Dave. You tell me.
Put that on me. No. Hit me with it. That's your boy. I don't know.
I can't understand. What is the appeal?
I think it is the unchecked, like how he's able to be, in his mind, unchecked. Like, I cannot be checked.
I feel like
and
a lot
it's
of
like a fantasy, I think, for men to be like, oh, I can just be unchecked. But like, hey, friend, that's not reality. Like, you actually need check. The people who you really admire, they have checks and balances. They have people that keep them in line. If you out here thinking you know everything, that's a problem, especially when we know you haven't studied it. My man said, I have what do you say? I have a plan, idea of a plan?
A concept of a plan. Yes.
If you can hear that with your two good ears and think like, this is my leader. I can't imagine that. I have a concept of a plan to lead the free world.
Right.
That's odd to me to
so
think that sounds like power.
This is the first time though. That's the first time I've heard of why. Because I'm like, we all watch the same clips. We all see the same. First of all, I don't like. I'm talking even mentally. People have to start thinking, is he well? But I'm like, what's the appeal that you got known rappers?
Yeah.
Known people.
Well, they got cases.
Okay, so
Hey, they got. Is that my line? Or they got a lot of them.
A lot of them do have
cases.
cases.
Like, hey.
A lot of them do have cases. I just feel like some people's line is different than others, right?
Yeah.
You might hear something like, I have concepts of a plan and I can't do that. Now other people, they're like, well, immigration is more important. And so like, again, people will try to paint it however they want to paint it. Your vote counts just as much as mine. And so I encourage people to just go out there and participate, and we should see where the chips go.
No, I agree, because I always say this, like, please don't listen to what people think you should vote for, because you might end up listening to one of these rappers is that who you should be getting information from? I don't know, but please just do your homework. That's all I'm going to say. Do your homework. I honestly think, too, vote local. Like, I think a lot of people are forgetting this whole local touch. The judges that are making decisions, vote for like, y'all, people are honestly, the best thing that's happened though, people are actually starting to learn government policy. They know who to get mad at. Like, rest in peace to, is his name Marcellus? It's just now people are like, how could this happen? How could we let an innocent man die? Now you learning about the government.
Right.
Now we're learning about the Supreme Court and how we're outnumbered. And people are like, how are these things passing? I don't understand. Man, local now government. We learning Schoolhouse Rocks. Like now we getting people to learn, because people need to know who to be mad at. Listen. And then when you get mad, now you can know that you got a choice. Do your homework.
People didn't know. I tell people I got involved somewhat in politics because my name is David Perdue. Here in Georgia, there was a senator with the same name, David Perdue. For his whole time as the senator, I would constantly get DMs from people asking me to fix potholes.
Okay.
No, I'm being serious, but that's when I realized nobody knows what the people they vote for do. Yeah. Like, this is a U.S. senator. You think he's going in front of your house and fixing potholes? Yeah. Like, why don't we know that? So for me, that made me go, oh, we should probably help people be more aware, to be more involved, because people just don't know what the people do.
It's crazy. So please, like, we're not gonna tell you who to vote, but please vote. Please do your homework. Please maybe don't listen to your favorite artist for who to vote for. Don't even listen to me. Don't listen to them. Just do your own homework and find out where do you want to fall on the scale. Shouts to my guys, David Perdue at Do or Die on social media. Shouts to my guy, the journalist, Julien Virgin at Julien_Virgin on socials, man. I appreciate y'all joining us. We'll be back with more Moco. Welcome back to Montgomery and Company. I'm your host, Renee Montgomery, and I am hyped to welcome writer, director, and award-winning filmmaker, Deborah Riley Draper. Appreciate you joining us here, Deborah.
I'm so hyped to be here.
Let's go.
Exciting. I'm a fan, so let's jump in.
Thank you. All right, so hold on. I got to flex on you real quick because I want people to know. I want to flex on a little bit of your credits. You were the director of James Brown's Say It Loud on A&E. a docuseries produced by Questlove and Mick Jagger. Now,
That's right.
Because you already know where I'm going, because it's like, Questlove and Mick Jagger, what was that like?
That's like having the 2 best EPs in music, right? So it was 4 episodes about the greatest entertainer ever, James Brown. And I got to tap into the knowledge of his friend, Mick Jagger, a longtime friend, and like the James Brown aficionado, which is Questlove. Like there's not a track, a beat, or anything you can play from the James Brown catalog that Quest does not know. Like he literally studied him as subject. So being able to have them as EPs and them being able to open their Rolodex, as a result, I got to interview Bootsy and LL Cool J and talk about James Brown and, and talk to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis about what I didn't know. My favorite song, That's the Way Love Goes, Janet Jackson, James Brown sample.
Really?
Yes.
So samples are always so interesting to me because it's like there's a formula for success there. But I got to ask Mick Jagger, what? Come on, we know the Mick Jagger of the Mick Jagger world. Like, I got the moves like Jagger. But who is he as like the human? You was around him.
You know what? He is smart. And quite knowledgeable. And he has a depth of knowledge that I didn't expect, not just in music, but in film and art across culture. He's 80 years old. He was launching a tour. He had this amazing birthday party he was planning in London. And, new album, new everything. We interviewed him. I had to kind of work with his schedule because he's like, I'll be on the island.
Okay, because this is Mick Jagger, honey.
Yeah, his island. So when he got to LA, it was great to be able to talk to him about a career that started in the 60s and that continues. That's not ending. It's actually picking up more steam, Like the Stones are the Stones, but for him to talk about his career and say James Brown impacted him to be the Mick Jagger that we know, not just the dance moves, but the ability to connect with an audience and the ability to storytell through music. Like I was mesmerized by his ability. Plus, since he had an Oscar, I was like, tell me more, sir. Tell me more, Sir Jagger. I want to learn.
So I was flexing, but then I had to ask, but you did the Legacy of Black Wall Street. Those are just a few, but I want to get into, as a director, you're a film producer, like, what do people like you watch on TV? Okay, because I'm big.
Bridgerton. For the goddess that is Shonda Rhimes. I watch all things Shonda.
Really?
100%.
I love that.
From day one.
Land. We're Shondaland stands over here too.
Shondaland.
What?
But yes, I watched that. This past year I watched Hijack because it just, that's just check for all the reasons. Because the writing's great.
Yes.
Right.
And Idris.
Better than great.
That's hilarious.
I watched that. But Legacy of Black Wall Street, that was for OWN. And what was funny about that is I was super nervous when I got the call to do that. I was like, will Miss Winfrey be watching this? Am I going to get notes from Oprah? Let me understand my assignment.
And how is she involved in her projects that are on her
network?
network?
We got notes back from her, and it was really great because they were very positive, and the notes that existed, I could action them. There were notes that were constructive and actionable. Nice. So being able to do those 2 episodes, write and direct them and have them come on OWN and Discovery Plus for me was great. But the subject matter of Legacy of Black Wall Street, and it aired 100 years to the day of the massacre.
Oh, man.
So to be able to tell that story of Black millionaires being murdered for success was personal in a lot of ways, because you think about, a legacy that's broken, right? They're missing links in those family histories because of what happened. So that was a bit of a tearjerker to work on, but at the same time, it was exhilarating because you see the future happening in Greenwood, and you see new entrepreneurs, and you see new people building on their dreams and having vision born out of what happened in the past, and they're carrying that legacy forward. So
I love it.
That was fun.
Seeds planted, they didn't know it was going to grow. I'm curious because you're a director, and I've seen this before where it's like the projects, they kind of become your baby, right? So how is it when Oprah sends her notes of constructive critique? Like, how is it when somebody critiques your baby?
I'm not listening. No, I'm just kidding. I'm like terrible at taking notes. I'm getting better. I'm working on it because I'm a writer and a director. I'm like, I wrote that and I directed that, so I'm good.
So
it's
you
working.
knew exactly how you wanted
That's
it
what
to
I
be.
wanted when I started it. No, taking notes. Everyone on the team laughs at me because I do abide by this principle. I actually don't listen to people. I don't, because when a whole lot of folks start talking and you're in your creative space, it messes up my creative rhythm. So when it's ready, then I'll present it for notes, and then I'll read the notes and I'll digest the notes, and then I'll decide if I want to action those notes or not. But like random talk, I'm not here for it. I do not want to hear people. I'm not interested in the comments.
So
at
how
all.
do you, I mean, this is great for me. We have a production company, Think Tank, and how do you basically tell people thank you, but no thank you?
Well, this is what I say. I'm a creative and I have a particular vision that I'm on a journey to get to. And I need to get there. I may need to fall. I may need to get back up. I may make some mistakes, but I need to make sure that I am going in the direction that I want to go. And when I need your incredible input, I'm going to ask for it.
Wow.
Yeah. But I don't need it in the middle. I don't need it at the beginning because I need to find my way. Wow,
I love that. Okay, so you also directed Olympic Pride, American Prejudice, and when you talked about it's the 1936 Olympics verse, I'm curious, you covered and studied that Olympics. Now we just witnessed the 2024 Olympics that happened in Paris. There was a lot of people that talked about the racism that happened in France. I mean, we saw Serena Williams go to her social media. We saw Steph Curry's family deal with some things. We heard that there were some people maybe calling the N-word to LeBron James. This was the 1936 Olympics. You were covering this is 2024.
You know what? Things happen in cycles, right? Until as a culture, we deal with the root of racism and we deal with kind of the lack of understanding humanity and the lack of equity and access that people of color have, and why that creates such this space of hatred. Until we unpack that, we're going to continue to get that. In 1936, you had 18 Black athletes, right?
Total.
400 American athletes, 18 Black athletes. Most people know Jesse Owens, but he had 17 other teammates, including Mac Robinson, Jackie Robinson's older brother, right? Oh. Yeah, and Ralph Metcalfe, who would become a congressman and become the founder of the Congressional Black Caucus and write the resolution for Black History Month. So this team was stoked, right? It was like 18 of the best Black athletes in the history of sport. And so they're on a boat, which, we don't really have that best of luck with boats. They're on a boat sailing to Nazi Germany. And that's where they would compete for the first time. And there were two female athletes, Black women, one from Chicago, Southside, one from Boston, Tidy Pickett and Louise Stokes. So there are these two Black women, 17 and 18 years old, in the middle of Nazi Germany. So what they experienced is quite conflicting because on the one hand, they won hearts and they won medals, but at the same time, on the American side, they experienced racism from the coaches. So I think we have a legacy of oppression and a legacy of our inability to deal with each other as equals. Wow. And we have to sort that.
I mean, and you talk about things that are cyclical, and we're now in another election cycle. You directed 20 Pearls, chronicling the history of America's first Black sorority, featuring VP Harris and now presidential candidate Harris. I mean, what was the energy like seeing that then and then now? What are your thoughts now, seeing what she's gone on to do?
It's crazy because when we were interviewing her, like there was so much build up because Secret Service was like, we need to see the room. So it was all of that energy coming to make sure that everything was safe, everything was secure.
How long do they come in advance? Like
we had been talking to them for weeks, and then they came in. We set the room up 48 hours in advance, and they checked everything out, and it was great. But that had me all nervous and stressed. And then when she walked in, it was just all of this immediate, brilliant energy and joy, and we laughed. She talked about the nickname they called her because her ears were big in college. And
what was the nickname?
they called her 3 C's and for cool, collected, but they also called her Pinocchio.
Oh no, what? Not VP Harris. I mean, to your point though, I love her energy. Where does she rank on your interviews as like?
She would be number 1 for me. Sir Mick Jagger. It's a tie. No.
So it's a tie between Mick Jagger and VP Harris as the best interviews.
Yeah, because they came with such a depth of knowledge, and I'm a knowledge seeker. So they were able, like, VP Harris was able to track the history of the sorority, but in the context of the women's movement, right? In the context of how America set women up from the very beginning, right? From the time of Plymouth Rock forward. So she put everything in political and cultural context. And then I learned cool stuff, like her aunt also was our soror and went to Howard University.
So you said, hold on, you said our.
Yes.
Okay, so are you an AKA?
100%.
Okay.
So,
my sister, I feel connected. My sister, my cousins, my family, they're all AKAs. So
that was one of the reasons I was hired to direct the documentary.
Kept it in-house, of course, because you couldn't have, I mean, you had to have.
It would have been odd, right?
Yeah. I mean, because could a Delta produce the same level?
Now, see, you're going to give me him a walk right out that door.
I had to ask because it was like, I just know how it is where
it's all, in the documentary, it's all D9 love.
Wow. Yeah,
so
that's amazing.
the film is a salute to our history and how we've managed to create institutions that allow us to serve, that allow us to become better oriented within our own communities, to do well, to do better. So we talk about Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, of course, but we talk about the other sororities and fraternities too, because as a function, as the Divine Nine, there's great work coming through every organization at all times.
I think the Divine Nine, I think it's going to be a real stroll to the poll.
It's going to be a real stroll to the poll. That's actually in my film, the first stroll to the polls, and then the original kind of 1948 collective of the Divine Nine that decided they're going to be a political force. That was in the 40s.
Wow.
Man,
I love the history and how it connects to today. I mean, even there's so many things that are changing rapidly with time. We have streaming changing television at a large level. People talk about it on the music side, how streaming has changed the business. People also talk about it on the TV side, how you can't produce necessarily the same volume type expensive movies anymore because the payback is just not going to be the same. What are your thoughts on film, the future of filmmaking, how streaming has changed the business? I mean, you're in the thick of it.
It's interesting. In May, I was at the Cannes Film Festival on a panel, and they asked that question. They specifically asked, "Are documentaries dead? Like, what are you going to do?" And my answer was like, I don't believe that. I believe that you have to adjust, right? There was a time when there was no TV, when there was just radio. There's a time when there was no radio, there was just newspaper, right? Like, media changes, and we have to figure out how to still be creative and be profitable, because we are in this to make money and to be a business. So we have to figure out where there are ways to be efficient that doesn't compromise our creativity, that doesn't compromise the quality.
Yeah.
And I think we're all brilliant enough to come together and figure out ways to make it better. And then there's always independent cinema. There's always the Oscar Michaud of it all, right?
What's that?
Oscar Michaud was the first Black filmmaker in the 1920s and the 1910s, and he figured out how to work to have a business outside of the traditional studio model. So I think that still exists for us.
I mean, I think you kind of hitting on that. You said Oscar Michaud?
Yeah.
That sounds a lot like social media too. You have all these various companies that are popping up and producing. How do you bring something to life if you don't have a budget?
Well, you're gonna work really hard at it. But, that it's exactly what Oscar Michaud did. He didn't really have a budget, so the actors were a lot of his neighbors and friends and people he went to church with. He showed his films in barns and in pool halls all over the place to build his audience, right? So he was building this audience in non-traditional ways, in what would be kind of like the great-great-grandparent of Twitter, you know, the great-great-grandparent of Instagram. So he was building these pockets of audiences across the Midwest. So I think the audience building and the brand building, that's important. But I do think if you create great work, people are going to want to see it, and they're going to want to talk about it, and they're going to want to share it. And I think quality becomes the first thing we think about, and then distribution.
I love
versus
that.
distribution than quality.
Because I mean, I feel like film and music are so synonymous, and even now with artists, it's getting to where even every big song used to have a music video, right? Yeah. But now songs they just drop them. They just release. You have 13 days in Ferguson. I have to get to that before we go, because that one, I think it commemorates the movement that was before, and after unjust murder of Michael Brown. So I'm just, how can we use, there's voices now. I think a lot of people now, there was a time where people felt like your voice, how do I use it and still keep my professionalism, or how can I make my voice be heard? What are your thoughts surrounding that?
I think what I've learned, and I'm going to go backwards to go forward. When James Brown said, "Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud," I think it was anthemic at that time for a lot of reasons, because we weren't accustomed to using our own voice. We weren't accustomed to say it loud. We were accustomed to, if I say it, am I going to get in trouble? There was so much respectability politics at play. We weren't sure if we were going to say our voice. Will you still have your job? Will you still have your house?
Yeah.
Are you going to be able to have an identity and exist? So watching James Brown always say it loud, and then looking at the voices of all of those young activists in Ferguson exercising their freedom of speech, exercising their voice, being visible, demanding to be heard. I think there's such a tremendous lesson in that, in not shrinking, right? And being able to stand on what you believe and stand on your truth and say it.
Say it loud. I mean,
Say it loud.
It is
I'm
funny
Black and I'm proud.
Man, that's fire. That's 13 days in Ferguson. Just by the way, all these, I'm bouncing off of all the projects that you are involved in. Either you directed it, wrote it, and it's incredible to see, because one of the things that we're starting to see more of is like people are saying out loud, like, yeah, let's have some representation. Let's have some people behind the camera that look like the stories you're telling in front of the camera. So I love that that's what you're doing. And before you go, though, I like to play a little game. So I want to know if you want to have a little Moco shot clock. You want to play a little?
Let's do it.
All right, come
How
on.
much time do I have on the clock?
60 seconds.
All right, let's go.
Okay, 60 seconds. I'm asking you about how many questions is there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions? There might be 4.
Okay.
And, I just want to see what you're working with.
Let's go.
All right, 60 seconds on the clock. Got it.
Oh my God, this is real. All right, let me get my game face then.
These are
All right.
questions about you, though. So you know who know you better than you?
No one.
All right, so start the clock. A sport you can play really well.
Golf.
Okay, Tiger Woods. What's your number?
I'm like Tiger Woods when he was 1.
All right, I'm gonna keep moving. So your shot clock. A sport you're really bad at.
Volleyball.
Okay, agreed. If you could have one sports superpower, what would it be?
Dunking.
Come on with it. Me too. If you could brag that you beat one athlete, who would it be?
Michael Jordan.
Come on, these are great answers. Last question. What's your walkout theme song?
I'm going to take the same one as Vice President Kamala Harris, and I'm going with Freedom.
Freedom. I can't move. Freedom, cut me loose. I love it. Yes,
I break
Deborah.
chains.
Well, I break chains all by myself. This is, listen, the Beehive is here. We're here.
We're here.
Okay. But
Same.
listen, I could have talked to you for so long. Thank you for joining me.
Welcome.
I love everything you're doing. I hope one day we work on a project together.
Wait, just say it.
Oh, one day we will work on a project together.
Okay, we can do it tomorrow.
Come on with it. Thank you for joining us here on Moco.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Wow. Make sure you guys follow everything Miss Deborah's doing at DeborahRileyDraper.com, and we'll be back with more Moco. All right, y'all. Had a great time today at Montgomery and Company. Remember, election season may be over, but our work as a community keeps going. I think a lot of our frustration with election season, with politicians, with anything going on in the government is that we spend too much energy worrying about what they're going to do for us. I think we all we got. So we got to remember to take care of you. You also got to remember to take care of each other, take care of your community, vote local, by the way. You'll start to realize that a lot of the things that you can fix is right there in your own community. Don't forget to get some rest, to take some time to refuel, reset, all of those things, because between everything going on in your own personal life, everything going on in the city of Atlanta, everything going on in the world, you got to remember to stay grounded and also remember to stay connected to your community. You won't have anything to give the people you love, to your community, or to the causes that matter if you don't take time to care for yourself in that process. So don't forget to give back to you, all right? You deserve that, and I'm reminding myself to do the same thing, which is why I already told you I'm going on a little vacay. All right. So thank y'all for joining us for another episode of Montgomery and Company. I'm your girl. I'm your host, Renee Montgomery. We'll see y'all next time. Thank y'all for joining us for this episode of Montgomery and Company. Remember, if you've got a question for the MoCo mailbag, send it to us at moco@wabe.org or at Montgomery Co Pod on Instagram. This show is produced by Think Tank Productions in collaboration with WABE. Our executive producers are Amina Brown, Scotty Crow, and Serena Grace. Audio production is by Kevin Rinker and Matt Owen. Video by Ariel Brown, Greg Harding Films, and Rashad Pitts. Until next time, I'm Renee Montgomery, and this is MoCo, where it's all sports, culture, and family business.
WABE.